Hey, I'm Sarah Gonzalez. Welcome to the news and why it matters. We have another special guest in the studio today, Mr. Colion Noir from NRA TV. Woohoo! Thank you so much for being here. All right, Pat, top story today.
It's a Kavanaugh hearing.
Yes, I have a feeling that's going to be yours too, Jason.
Fourth straight day in a row, all Kavanaugh, and I don't know how we're going to get through this in 20 minutes in overtime. Don't know how it's going to happen.
I know. You know what? I planned very little other things because I was like, I feel like we're just going to go on about that pretty much the whole time. What about you, Colion?
I tried to ignore it to the best of my ability, but yeah, I'm going to have to go with Kavanaugh.
You can't get away from it.
You can't get away from it.
I really tried to ignore it.
Yeah, I know. I know. All right, before we do that, want to make sure to thank our sponsor, My Patriot Supply. So there was just recently that hurricane, in South Carolina, was it? And you just don't know when some sort of disaster is going to hit and you're going to be left, your floors are going to be flooded, or you're going to have no electricity, and everything in your fridge is going to go bad, and you can't get out and go to the store. So what do? That's why you need My Patriot Supply. Have you ever tried any of their stuff?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Glenn always says it's delicious.
It is. It's really good. And, people always say, well, if you get hungry enough, you'll eat anything. Well, maybe, but you don't have to.
Right.
You can get really good food from My Patriot Supply.
Yeah, that's not a good sell.
No, it's not.
Well, you'll eat it. I mean, I guess if I had to, I'd eat my cat, but I don't want to.
I don't want to.
I actually purchased some of it.
Yeah?
It's interesting. I've had a couple of guests come in because I don't cook.
Yeah.
So it's literally the only thing in my pantry.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
So people come in like, what is that? Then, it's like My Patriot.
That's dinner
really
tonight.
funny. So you like it too?
I mean, I honestly haven't tried it yet.
Okay.
You're
waiting for the
down.
that's
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
That's good. If I had it, I'd want to crack in to try it.
Because I can't depend on Uber Eats when, following.
Right, exactly. So right now you can go to preparewithnews.com and get a 2-week emergency food supply kit. Get this, $75 for 2 weeks of emergency food supply. Wow. That is an amazing deal. Go to preparewithnews.com. All right, gentlemen, I am opening up the floor for the Kavanaugh hearings. And before we get into it, I do want to say, as of the time of this taping, of course, we have heard Christine Ford's testimony, but we can't get into the Kavanaugh stuff because it's ongoing. It's going on right now. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Ford's testimony today. We can save all of the Kavanaugh part of it for tomorrow. So Dr. Ford came up.
Yeah, and we talked about it on both filling in for Glenn and on my show, Unleashed, and So
what you're saying is you've had a really long day.
Had a long day of talking about it, but I actually believe she's been sexually assaulted. Yes. I had some sexual assault survivors who called and said they don't believe her at all. Straight up just think she's lying about it for a number of reasons. But I kind of felt like she'd been assaulted, just not by Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
Which kind of fits into the fact that 2 other guys came forward and admitted to it.
Which is so odd.
Isn't it?
It's really, I don't know what would prompt someone to admit.
If they actually weren't the perpetrators, why would you say so? Even if somebody paid you, would you admit to something you didn't do? It's a felony?
That definitely threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to place myself hypothetically in being in the position of a guy who did that and then came out and said he did. But the idea of somebody just coming forth, just kind of willing to say, yeah, no, it wasn't him, it was me.
It's crazy if it really wasn't you.
It is.
And it also kind of goes towards, I agree with you, Pat. I think that she probably was assaulted at some point, but it also kind of goes into how, I got a lot of tweets today from people telling me, what about the lie detector test? What about that? Well, we haven't been given the paperwork to even see like the questions that were asked and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that could be for a very specific reason.
Yes.
So they could have asked her, were you sexually assaulted? Not even asking her about Kavanaugh, and it would show up as a positive.
Right.
So until we see that paperwork, we're just not going to know.
Let's be honest, though. When I'm watching Murray, cool. Give me a lie detector test, and I'll take it with all the weight in the world. I'm like, I knew she was lying. I'm not saying I watch Murray. But
yeah, right.
I think there's something to be said about the level, like how much weight we give to a lie detector test in a situation like this.
Yeah.
It's just the consequences are just too high, and the results there are just too many variables with respect to polygraph tests and so.
That's why they're not admissible in court.
That just don't really allow. And what it does do on the alternative is, in the court of public opinion, it gives a false sense of understanding of truth.
Didn't Roy Moore pass a lie detector test as well?
Did he?
Pretty sure he did.
I think he
don't
did.
remember that.
How much do you know about lie detector tests, and how positive did it? Because the conclusion they reached was interesting because it wasn't she's telling the truth. It wasn't this was a positive test. It was no indication of deception or
Yes.
something to that effect.
Yes.
It doesn't seem like a powerful positive to me.
No.
Is that as positive as it gets, though? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I just think right off the bat, it seems a little bit shady to not disclose, to just say, well, she passed a polygraph test, but we're not going to give you any more information about that. I mean, that's a pretty relevant, if you're going to say she passed it and use that to bolster her credibility, you better be prepared to give the details of it.
Yeah, release it. Let's all see it.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything today that made me think that this accusation is any more credible than it was yesterday. In fact, it actually seems less credible
I thought
today
so too.
than it does to me. I don't know how you can read anything else into it. I mean, straight off the bat, they asked her, Mitchell asked her about the letter that she sent to Dianne Feinstein. And so she goes, could you tell me in that letter, is everything correct? So you would think, I wrote this detailed letter about my account to a United States senator. You would think that that is absolutely correct. She couldn't say that it was. And she pulled it out,
I love
looked back
the
through
response. No, I used the wrong adjective there.
Right.
That was actually the response. There was a
weird.
semicolon that should have been a colon, and I think I left a dangling participle in the third sentence. So, bizarre exchange.
I know, right.
It was bizarre to me. My mind went, okay, she's in academia, so
Yeah.
they can get a little pedantic sometimes.
Yes.
But nonetheless, I was like, what?
I know.
And I started watching it from that point. So I was like, what are they
That's what hooked
talking
you
about?
in.
It actually was entertaining. I was kind of entertained by it,
Yeah.
which was maybe sick.
I was
don't
going to say, which I'm not sure says a lot about us as a society, but I was into it. I was here for it all morning. I
think there's
could not stop watching.
I think there's something to say about the contrast in, what typically the proceedings like that are usually like, which are a snooze fest.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you have this kind of barn burner, so to speak, with real people, with affecting real lives versus something we see on TV that's fake. I think everyone was entertained by it, but to some degree, not to minimize what's happening here, but to a degree it is.
Yeah.
I also will say that she is in many ways a better presenter of information from an articulation standpoint than Kavanaugh is. So, which I think is incredible. It doesn't bode well for him in the court of public opinion.
Does that mean you found her credible?
She was compelling.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a
Right?
great word
Yeah.
to use for that. Yeah.
And for me as an attorney, I've been trained to kind of knock back my attempts at confirming bias or engaging in certain bias that I had. Like I purposely try to restrain them and remain objective. In doing so, that's kind of how I came to the deduction. She speaks really well, very clearly. Where Kavanaugh, not that he's bad or he's not articulate, it's just she does so in such a way that's very compelling.
Yeah.
And I can see the broader spectrum of people in the world who aren't necessarily considered intellectuals or people who really look past the surface level of situations like this and say, you know what? She's telling the truth, I believe her, purely based off the way she made them feel watching her tell her story.
Yeah, and let's before we keep going, speaking of her being compelling, let's watch a little bit of that.
What is the strongest memory you have? The strongest memory of the incident, something that you cannot forget. Take whatever time you need.
Indelible in the hippocampus is the laughter, the uproarious laughter between the two, and they're having fun at my expense.
I mean, that's compelling. It was very polished, But
So what I hated.
the laughter thing was one of the holes that they poked earlier, I feel, whenever they asked her about the boys walking down the stairs, and in her initial statement, she had said that they were talking to others at the party as they exited the room, but then today she said, I don't know if there were other people there, so, they were talking and laughing, but then there weren't other people there that they were talking and laughing to now.
First of all, that was that was the only legitimate question I ever heard coming from Democrats on this. It was usually the standard went monologue for like half your time allotted, grandstand, and then praise her for how brave she is and all that stuff, with no attempt to actually let her tell them what happened so we can get to the bottom of it.
Because they don't give
a lot of emotion.
No, they really honestly don't.
Yeah.
If we're just going to be honest here, I think you said something that was incredibly important. I think you said it as well. You piggybacked off of it. But the idea of something did happen to her. Yes. I do believe that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, was it Kavanaugh?
Right.
And I think what's happening here is that's getting lost in a lot of the discourse that's happening in her storytelling, and then, like you said, some of the Democrats grandstanding. It's something probably did happen to you, but was it Kavanaugh?
So that's
Do you have proof that it's Kavanaugh?
Exactly.
Because if you don't, you can't ruin a man's livelihood over it.
And that's another thing that makes her less credible in hearing this story straight from her, is that's her only memory that she's sure of. The only thing she's sure of is
that's 100%. Everything else is a little bit foggy.
She doesn't remember how she got there, how she got home, who was there,
where it was,
and think
of where the house was.
Right, and think about how important it is to name the person that drove you home. They're going to nonstop be saying, "What is wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Why are you like this? What happened?"
Yeah.
She would have told that person everything that happened. Or if not, they would have been able to testify that something was very off. Yes, I did take her. She stormed down. I took her home. It reveals a lot, in my opinion, that person has not come forward. And they asked her later, they actually asked her that. Why hasn't this person?
Yes.
And she said no.
Yeah.
So that was very big. I mean, I just don't see how you read after today, how you read into the fact that she is a credible witness. A lot of people were saying, she's a credible witness. I'm like, how is she a credible witness when every single person, the alleged witnesses that you said were there,
in the house said
all
no.
deny it.
Yeah.
But the person that probably would be in her corner, her best friend, Leland Kaiser,
at the time,
specifically asked, so why did she deny this? She threw her under the bus and said a health reason.
yes.
I saw that.
Does that mean a mental issue?
I was like,
I don't know what else it could mean.
that was a dodge more than I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
Wow.
big time.
Very much a dodge.
And that's your lifelong friend, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're still friends to this day.
Well,
I
because
mean, probably not now.
Well, she said, "I'm sorry."
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of relationship there.
I was incredibly disappointed in Mitchell's lack of follow-up questions on some of these things. How do you not continue to push that?
Yeah.
She didn't push that. The other thing, the beach friends, which is another thing that went towards her credibility.
Yes.
Her beach friends, so her statement was her beach friends told her, it's like, you have got to take this at least to the press or somebody. Now think back to her original statements. Her original statements was she never mentioned this to anybody ever. Her
Until
husband,
2012.
her husband and her therapist. Then after talking to them, she took it to the congressman, I don't remember the name of the congressman in her state or whatever. That's right.
Yes.
And then the Washington Post. Now this blows that out of the water. So she told a group of beach friends, her words, all about this. And this group of people, who are these beach friends? There was no follow-up on that. But you caught her in a lie on that.
Yes, beach friends who she was meeting with, presumably because she had flown to the beach to get there.
Another lie.
Right, which again, so if we back up, she said that she couldn't come and testify sooner because she had this fear of flying and she just needed more time, which, at the time you were called a monster if you dared say that was a delay tactic.
Yeah.
And then I think we have a clip of the questioning going on about her fear of flying and whether or not that was a factor. Watch.
May I ask, Dr. Ford, how did you get to Washington?
In an airplane.
Okay. I asked that because it's been reported by the press that you would not submit to an interview with the committee because of your fear of flying. Is that true?
Well, I was hoping that they would come to me, but then realized that was an unrealistic request.
Actually, they offered
It would
to
have
do
been
that.
a quicker trip for me.
Yes. So that was certainly what I was hoping, was to avoid having to get on an airplane, but I eventually was able to get up the gumption with the help of some friends and get on the plane.
I also saw on your CV that you list the following interests of surf travel, and you, in parentheses, put Hawaii, Costa Rica, South Pacific Islands, and French Polynesia. Have you been all to those places?
Correct.
Did you drive?
By airplane?
Yes.
And your interests also include oceanography, Hawaiian and Tahitian culture. Did you travel by air as a part of those interests?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Easier for me to travel going that direction when it's a vacation.
Interesting.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll play devil's advocate.
Okay.
I'm kind of indifferent about it, but I largely hated flying for a long portion of my life. Absolutely.
I still hate it.
Yeah. But I was borderline terrified of it because I'm a control freak.
Yeah.
So I would still fly. However, I was more inclined to fly to places where I really wanted to be at the destination.
Okay.
But if it was somewhere where I didn't want to go, I would purposely come up with reasons and roadblocks as to why I couldn't make it.
But I mean, if you're going to
So
go
that
so
makes sense to
far,
you.
That does make sense to me.
but if you're going to go so far as to tell the world that this happened and say that it's your civic duty to make sure that the public knows and that, you know, the Senate knows so that they can make an informed decision, wouldn't you then realize, okay, I've already put myself out there and said it's my civic duty. I kind of have to follow that up with going to tell them in person.
In a perfect world, you're right, and I absolutely agree with you. But what I think may be happening here, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think sometimes when we deal, and this is, I think we're in a very, very dangerous time, first of all. Let me just put that out there right now. I mean, I got friends pledging celibacy because of things like this.
Oh, yeah.
People need to understand the level of danger involved in making an accusation and then not following it through. I think it's, I think she may have kind of I was about to use a very bad analogy. But in all seriousness, I think what may have happened with her, she thought she could just put it out there and walk away. And no one was going to question it.
Well, there are people who have followed up and done that. They've put in an anonymous tip and said, "Oh, he did this to me, but I'm not going to tell you who I am."
Exactly,
I'm just gonna say anonymous.
And I think it took on a life she may have not expected it to take on.
That's possible.
Or she didn't appreciate the severity of the accusation, considering who it was and during the time that
She might have been promised to that. The Democrats might have said, "Look, you're not going to have to go in for testify.
Yeah.
We're going to get a delay off of this.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. We'll tackle this later on after this gets delayed another week or something like that."
Because she does strike me as I'm probably gonna get some heat for this, but I mean I've seen it before. She does strike me as socially awkward. So I can imagine she hates this. Absolutely hates the scrutiny, hates being in front of everybody. I'm pretty sure she doesn't like it at all, especially considering she doesn't have much in the way of control. As an educator, as a professor, it's her classroom. She has complete control of the situation. And I think, and I'm inclined to agree with you in that regard too. I think they made a promise to the moon to come out and do this because they have their own agenda.
Yeah, definitely.
And then as a result of that, knew they could always just ask for forgiveness later when they're like, guess what? Gotta go to Washington.
So one of the
Let's take a break really quickly and we'll get back into it.
Feeling a little left out. Am I the only one that doesn't have beach friends?
A lot more to get into on the hearing, but before we do that, I want to thank our sponsor, Brick House. I know we talked about it yesterday, I think, but Dawn to Dusk has been a lifesaver for me. If you are in the market for something to keep you going, about midday you crash, Dawn to Dusk is awesome. It's like you're drinking the coffee, but you don't have the jitters. You don't feel weird, like your heart's about to pump out of your chest.
Take it from me, Sarah has insane energy, and this is where this is coming from.
Yes.
Now I know.
Yeah, now you know. And I don't have to pound the coffee anymore. So, all right. Also, I don't sleep, but anyway, I digress. They've also got Field of Greens. I know Pat is a big fan of Field of Greens.
I love because I don't put a single vegetable into my body.
Except when you drink it.
Except when I drink it from Field of Greens, because I can't stand, kale, the only way that you can afford to eat kale is when you put a lot of coconut oil in the pan, and then that allows the kale to slide into the trash a lot easier.
No, you're wasting good kale. What?
So this, I'm getting all kinds of superfood with Field of Greens.
Yeah, it is delicious. It's good in even water. If you want to try it like that as well. You can go to brickhouseblaze.com. Use offer code GREEN to get 15% off of your order, or you can text the promo code GREEN to 41411. All right, jumping back into all of the hearing stuff, I want to get back into the conversation. Jason, I know you said there were a couple more points you wanted to make, but I want to take a listen to what Jake Tapper had to say about the hearing.
These accusations by these women against Judge Kavanaugh are so brutal. they're brutal accusations, and his denial is so unequivocal that there's nothing that happened that he can even understand why these charges would be brought forward. The charges are upsetting, and they've triggered an entire national conversation about sexual assault and sexual harassment, about the unequal way that women and girls are treated in this country. At the same time, there is, as of now, no contemporaneous corroborating evidence for any of the charges, as far as we know. We haven't seen anybody emerge and say, yes, I remember that. And that is an important part of the story as well.
That's what I love about Topper.
Yes.
That's what I love about him.
Calls it straight both ways.
And I mean, he knows that he's doing it the right way when both sides are mad at him at different times.
I completely agree with him. I don't think Dr. Ford belonged in front of the dais today. I don't think she belonged to have her day in the hearing. I don't. I think that if there would have been somebody cooperating, even if like Anita Hill, if there would have been at least one other person that said, yeah, this is how this person acted in the workplace, then that would have been enough for me to say, yes, now she deserves her day in front of the hearing. But everybody denied it. Everybody has denied it. There's not one single person that can back it up. And to the contrary, they absolutely say, no, this did not happen, including her own friends. Once that came out, I would have said, no, this is done. We're taking a vote. Personally, that's what I would have done.
I agree with you. I think it sets one of the most dangerous precedents
Yes.
in country's history, especially for any public figure that lives. Because at this point now, as long as it becomes politically expedient or whatever agenda that may be living under the surface, all someone has to do is create a compelling story, talk about it, and
you're done.
That's it.
You're
There's
done.
no day in court. There's nothing you can do. Just the mere accusation of it. Done. Like I was listening to Trevor Noah, who I have to agree, Ben Shapiro is unbelievably unfunny, and he was talking about it. And
His stand-up is good, though. That's what's so weird.
I think stand-up is terrible.
Really? I like his stand-up, but I don't like his...
I just don't think the guy's funny. He seems like a cool guy. I just don't think he's funny. But he was making a joke about someone saying that these accusations could ruin his life, and he made a joke. He's like, "Oh, and what? You'd have to go back to the blood minefields of Sierra Leone," and it's like, well, dude, what do you think his life is going to be like after this, right? He's going to have to live with this. Now, even potential employers, if that's the route he seeks to take, are going to look at it like, do I want to deal with this? Do I want to have these issues with somebody who's been accused? Just the mere optics of it. People undervalue the importance of optics in the state of where we are in this country. And just being accused, whether you're male or female, of something like this is enough to ruin you.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Social justice warriors will make sure that even if you don't have your day in court, they will ruin your life. Yeah, for sure. Jason, I want to know what you thought about, I guess you and I were paying attention to social media, to Twitter, right, which was just a giant dumpster fire. I had to finally just be like, I give up with you people. I just can't do it. The people who were, I guess, rushing to judgment, even some of the Democrat lawmakers, they were rushing to judgment on already saying, I believe that this happened. I believe, but they hadn't even heard Kavanaugh yet, right? So, I mean, how would it be fair to say, I believe her. I think that it happened. Well, and I think that we should you guys should cancel this because we need another Supreme Court nominee.
Well, it's just ridiculous. Like, how can you just unequivocally say that I believe this accusation when there is literally nothing to back it up? All you're believing in is words. Yeah. You're not believing in, there's no substance. There's nothing behind those words. That's all it is. What they should do is they should turn it around and say, I always say this to my kids, as like, not only just treat other people as you would do, but always think about when you're saying something to people or doing stuff, always turn it around and imagine if they're doing it back to you. So all these people that say, I unequivocally believe this person just based off of accusations, put yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
What if it happened to you?
Yeah, let's take a break. We'll be back. But I'm just like, you haven't even heard from him yet. How are you already making up your... Got much more to say. I don't even think we're done with this topic. Are we?
No, still going.
There's so much more to say on it, but you're going to have to catch that in overtime. So Blaze subscribers, make sure to go to On Demand. And if you're not listening to podcasts yet, subscribe, rate us. So we'll see you in overtime.